And what's up, Gamecock Nation? Welcome into GC Live Wednesday episode of the show. I'm Wes Mitchell, joined, as you see right there on your screen, by our good buddy Mike Uva. Both of us, of course, of GamecockCentral.com. If you have not already, go check out that dollar deal. $1, 1 year. Mike, hopefully everybody has already taken advantage of that, but I'm sure we got a few folks who are maybe straggling in a little bit late. Maybe they've been holding off for some reason. Don't know why, but $1 still available. It's not going to be available forever. I can promise you that. So
no, got a couple more weeks. And the good thing is this, right? I mean, look at the calendar right now. It's February 9th. There's a lot of people out there. Wes, I'm not trying to throw you under the bus, but I'm definitely in this mix. You know, you maybe haven't got your significant other, that special someone in your life, a special gift. So what better way to say I love you than to get them a full year subscription of Gamecock Central, because they'll be looking at you like, wow, you really shelled out the million. No. You only spend $1. And on top of that, their birthday's a couple months from now. Boom, you get a hat too that you can give them. So it's kind of the 2-for-1 special, and it's good too, you know, because people are gonna be thinking that you're Rockefeller out here shelling out money, but it's only $1. So can't hurt. And just put it under their credit card. No one's gonna know until a year from now.
There you go. Yeah, $99 is the regular price for a year. $1 right now. Go ahead, take advantage. He is Mike Uva. I'm Wes Mitchell. You can go hang out with us on the Insiders Forum all day, every day, pretty much. Huge part of what we do is the Insiders Forum. So come check it out. By the way, before we get any further, we got to tell you about our other good buddy. It is Clint Hammond of the Mortgage Network, clinthammond.com, 803-771-6933. Clint is, of course, our presenting sponsor right here on GC Live. And if I can find it, his NMLS number is 71597. For whatever reason, you have to say that anytime you do a mortgage ad. So Clint, the branch manager of the Columbia Mortgage Network and our longtime presenting sponsor, who we appreciate very much, going to tell you all a little bit more about some new sponsors here later on. But let's get right down to it, Mikey. We don't talk a whole lot of Gamecock basketball on GC Live because normally it's me and Chris. You, Colin, our photographers, they all do an excellent job covering the basketball programs. But since we've got you on today, man, I wanted to start there because I thought yesterday was an interesting day for men's basketball because we're sort of at that point again in the season where the pressure to try and win some games late and put yourself on the bubble if you're this basketball team is upon us. And Frank Martin called yesterday an opportunity for them. I thought the team competed really, really well. Mm-hmm. I thought, and again, I would never claim to be a basketball expert, but I watched that game. I was like, man, if they could get this type of performance against the lesser teams on their schedule, they're probably not sitting here with the record that they have right now. Like I thought they competed against a team that just has really been playing well lately in Kentucky. So your thoughts, I want to talk about Beamer at halftime and Spurrier being there and all that stuff in a bit. But first of all, your thoughts on the actual game yesterday with South Carolina sort of hanging around, but then Kentucky just being too much in the end.
Yeah, and then I want to respond to our good buddy Kevin Ramsey in the comments section in just a little bit. But yeah, I think, look, going into that game, going on the skid that they've been on these last couple days, what seems like, forever, right? I mean, these skids that they've been going on this season, they feel like they turn into months. And I think that what we've seen with South Carolina this year is they do show sparks. They do show moments where they are good. They flash. We saw that in the second half at the beginning against Kentucky. And unfortunately, the wheels just fell off against a very good Wildcat team. Now, when you look at it in a vacuum sense and you're looking at just one game, that's much easier said, right? But when you look at it from a broader standpoint, you look at the whole season and, you have to do that, right? It's been disappointing. There's no question about it. And when you look down the line of what the issues have been, and it's not even talking about some of the things that Frank has talked about, because it's more so about what you're seeing with your eyes. The reality is they have not been able to have consistent point guard play. I don't care what team you're playing for. I don't care if it's South Carolina. I don't care if it's Kentucky. I don't care if it's the LA Lakers. I don't care if it's a youth basketball team down at Dreher. You need to be able to have good point guard play. They just have not been able to have that consistently. And on top of that, they have bigs who have flashed this season. but for whatever reason, they just have not been able to put it all together. And I mean, shoot, you seeing something, the issue here? No consistent point guard player, not having consistent point guard play, and you're not getting consistent play out of your bigs. What are you going to do? And look, we can sit here, we could talk about Frank, and we will, because it falls back on the coaching staff. No question about it. But that's not going to change right now. These are the players that they have. What are you going to do? There's no magic wand that you can just wave and say, all right, point guard play is going to be better. Big play is going to be better. We could sit here, we could talk about Frank. We will. But as far as this team goes, this year's squad, what can you do to make this team better right now? Because the guys just have not been stepping up. The guys that you expect to step up have not been stepping up. There's been flashes from some of the younger guys, and that's great. But, just looking at that game last night and just looking at the last couple games during this 3-game skid, that has been the issue. And that's been the issue really all season long as well.
Mike, I look at this season, and I think there are sort of two different ways to look at it right now. One, there's an immense amount of pressure on Frank. We all know that. Like, that's the elephant in the room. There's a huge amount of pressure last year at the end of the season. It nearly played out a completely different way. And then there was so much pressure coming into this season, Mike, to win and to make the tournament and to get there. And sort of, I think a lot of people just looking at the big picture, the 10 years, the outcomes, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the sort of microscope of this year, though, is that other than Couisnard and Keyshawn Bryant, you're talking about basically a completely different team as far as contributors go. So there's the big picture pressure of it's time to win. And then there's the short-term reality of it was always going to be very difficult to take all these pieces and in one season mesh them all together into a unit, in my opinion.
But you know what people are going to say to that, Wes? That falls back on coaching. Why can't he recruit? Why can't he do that? I get it. I mean, it's not saying Frank is, clean of everything. But look, the last couple, and every team's dealing with it to an extent. But when you're already in a hole like South Carolina was last year, going into this year, and you have the super seniors that we talk more so about football, but I mean, it's the case for every sport, baseball, basketball. Shoot, if you have hockey out there as well, whatever sport it is, South Carolina was already going to be behind the 8 ball going into the season. It didn't matter who you brought in from a coaching standpoint. So you bring the pieces that they have, 9 new faces, 8 different players on scholarship that weren't here a year ago. Yeah, it's going to be difficult. There's no question about it. It's going to be difficult to put it together. So I think the big question that you have to ask now is, what can South Carolina do to finish the year off in some type of positive manner? Because whether or not you want Frank Martin back next year, you need to be able to show the people that are, number one, committed to come here, that they keep their commitment, especially if they only have a verbal commitment of guys that have been looking at South Carolina the last couple of years. You're going to lose guys. It happens in every sport, but basketball especially. You got to do everything you can to be able to piece things together, because if Frank is gone after the end of this season, it's going to take some time. It's going to take time. It's going to take about, I'd say about 3 or 4 years to really turn things around, because unlike football, it's not as easy to turn things around. And especially in the SEC, as we've seen over the last couple of years. Think back, Wes, about 10 years ago. No one was really talking about how the SEC was dominant in basketball. It's got really dominant over the last couple of years. The number of players, I think the SEC, it's in the hundreds, the amount of players over the last couple of seasons that they've been able to produce, maybe the last 10 years, the number of NBA players they produce in comparisons to other conferences, and they lead that category. So it's only going to get tougher. If you do replace Frank, though, you got to be realistic with yourself. I hate to say this, and I think some Gamecock fans get it. You're not just going to be able to get someone like John Wooden to walk in here. You got to realize that, right? So be careful when asking, like, all right, we got to get a new coach. Yeah, because I think if Frank goes somewhere else, I think Frank's going to be successful. That doesn't mean that Frank can continue to be successful here. But you have to realize, too, that it's going to take some time. And I think right now, in the world of college sports, more than ever, patience does get thin. And I don't know what it's going to take the type of coach you're going to need. NIL certainly not going to help try to keep guys in state here. I mean, the Kentuckys of the world, the Kansases of the world, the North Carolinas, the Dukes, they all have boosters that are set up to be able to take advantage of this. So I think it's only going to make things more difficult in the world of NIL, regardless if Frank Martin's here or not next season.
So let's talk about the end of this season, Mike. You have obviously South Carolina loses last night. You've got at Georgia, 2:00 this Saturday, at Ole Miss on Tuesday, then at home, number 25 LSU, at home Mississippi State, then at Bama, Missouri at home, and at number 1 Auburn to finish out the year. What are your expectations based on the ups, the downs, everything we've seen from this team? What do you think the realistic expectations are for fans moving forward? And also maybe the other side of that is what can fans hope to see as far as like a positive, like what needs to happen for anybody to look back at this season and say, okay, that was something to build on? Because it's kind of getting to the point. I was listening to Jay on 107.5 this morning, and he was like, look, you're starting to get into that point where with every loss, you're getting closer to where it's like you have to just win the SEC tournament to get into the dance. I don't know if we're quite at that point yet, but we were getting very close to that point. So how do you see the rest of this season from kind of a big picture standpoint?
Well, I think you guys got to be able to show some fight, right? You need to be able to show some fight. And for whatever reason, during this losing streak, you really haven't seen it from this team. And like I said, it's not just on the players. It's not just on Frank. It's everybody. It's a collective whole. We can sit here and say it starts with the coach, and absolutely. I mean, you could say that for any sport. So, I mean, it's everyone that's involved right now. Everyone needs to be able to find a way to just continue to pick themselves up and move forward. You have 6 opportunities left in the regular season, and then you're looking at the conference tournament. The NIT, I know some people don't want to be like, oh, we want to go to the dance. I get that. Baby steps, though, especially with where you're looking at right now. If South Carolina were to make the NIT based on the hole that they're in right now, I think a lot of people would look at it just based on where they are right now and say, you know what? They showed some fight. They showed some fight. Now, I'm not going to do the whole popsicle headache game and throw out this number like, all right, they got to win 4 games or 5 of these 6 games and then win 2 games in the conference tournament. We'll worry about that when we get there. The bottom line is they need to start winning. It starts this Saturday against Georgia, because if they lose against Georgia, and shoot, don't sleep on the Bulldogs.
It could happen.
Because Georgia put up a hell of a game against Auburn the other night. So they're certainly one of those teams, and you've gone up against them already. So they already have you in terms of on tape of what they need to do better against you. And they had an opportunity to beat you too. I mean, you had to go on a run at home to come back against Georgia. So more than anything, get the win this weekend against Georgia, and then be able to find ways to just build off of those wins. Just get some momentum going. It's going to be difficult to win 5 or 6 straight of these games, because the reality is you have to go on the road to Auburn to end the year. Auburn, of course, coming off their first loss last night against Arkansas, but they're still a very good team. So I don't know. In my eyes, you just got to find a way just to show some competitiveness. And if you can find a way to sneak into the NIT, that's great. Is that going to be great in the eyes of maybe fans? Is that going to be great in the eyes of the board of trustees when making the decision if Frank's going to be back next season? I don't know, because I think we need to see. It's not just about wins. It's not just about wins. You need to show some damn fight. You need to show some commitment. And look, last night we didn't see it. We didn't see it. And they showed fight at the beginning of the second half, but it just wasn't there for the entire game, even up against a good Kentucky team. I'm not going to lose sleep over the fact that, all right, they're the top 5 team, this and that. You need to be able to show fight the entire game. They showed in that game, Wes, was probably the most fight I've seen during this losing streak, but still at times I felt like they felt sorry for themselves. They just need to pick themselves up.
Mike, I thought they got at times really good play and really good energy from Couisnard and Keyshawn. And it just sort of, I don't know, it reemphasized to me, like, look, there are some talented guys on this team, but to me, when the going gets really, really tough, you need your guys who have been there to sort of take ownership and to direct the ship.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I mean, I know they have some guys that have played before, and you have newcomers who have taken on leadership roles, like Eric Stevenson. You appears to be a great leader. I really like what Reese brings to the table, but to me, when things get really tough, you want for your guys like Key and Jermaine to sort of step up and help carry the load a little bit. And I thought we saw that some last night. Now, again, it's against Kentucky. You're going to have to play perfect or near perfect to beat Kentucky. But I think we probably needed to see that a little bit more consistently in these more winnable games, not just in the game where you have to be Superman to go win it.
And that's actually a question that I asked Frank. I said, especially during this stretch now, I mean, who do you lean on to be able to pick you up from a player standpoint? And the two guys that he pointed out weren't even Keyshawn and Jermaine right off the bat. He said that they've had their struggles this season, but over the last couple of weeks, they've been able to get back to, as he continues to call it, and the players refer to it as, they've been able to find peace with themselves. So Keyshawn and Jermaine, certainly. But the first two guys actually that he mentioned from a leadership standpoint, who he feels like has done a tremendous job all season, and he will lean on over these next 6 regular season games and then going into the conference tournament, is Eric Stevenson. And on top of that, James Reese as well. So I think, the beauty of bringing in some of these transfers, and even though it's tough sometimes to mesh it all together and will it work, sometimes it will, sometimes it won't, especially when you have 8 scholarship guys, 9 new guys all together. It's not always easy, but give credit to Stevenson in terms of the hustle that he's shown. Look, there's some nights he makes the shots. There's some nights that we're looking at saying like, what are you doing? You're shooting way too much. But one thing that I have enjoyed, at least with him, is, they're down sometimes by 15 or 20. We've seen him hit the deck trying to go for a loose ball. And that just those little things, especially when you have a guy that, number one, hasn't been here before and he's an upperclassman, it can do some good things to the guys around you. We saw that with Frank Booker when Frank came in a couple of years ago, and just the spark that he was able to give that team. And then James Reese, of course. Look, when he gets hot, the kid has been able to shoot lights out. And as the season has gone on, he's got better with his shooting. He had a good little streak going during that winning streak. So, those are the guys when you look at from a statistical standpoint, that's great. But stats aside, it's doing those little things that will hopefully give that added juice that Frank was mentioning after the game last night and give that enthusiasm to the guys that he feels like need to step up. That's what he mentioned after the game. There's guys that didn't play last night or didn't get as much minutes as they typically do because he feels like they just haven't had that enthusiasm that he'd like to see in practice over the last couple of days.
Definitely. Again, Georgia, South Carolina, that's in Athens this Saturday afternoon. Key game for the Gamecocks. If they lose that one, rough look for them. Let's move on to football. But first, I want to tell everybody about one of our newest sponsors this week with the launch of the South Carolina line from Homefield Apparel. You can see it on your screen right there. 13 new designs. It's the first time that Homefield Apparel has had South Carolina athletic, a South Carolina athletic line. For those who don't know, Homefield is an Indy-based company, premium collegiate apparel. I know most of you or many of you already have gotten on board, but head on over to homefieldapparel.com. Use the code GamecockCentral. There is no space there. Use the code GamecockCentral to get 15% off your first purchase. I got my little free sneak peek from Homefield. My girlfriend, Mackenzie, who Mike knows, she's already stolen both shirts and has put them in her closet. So, Mike, I know you're changing condos right now, by the way. Did you get your
knock on wood,
box?
Knock on wood, everything works out.
Did you get your box? I had them send. You should be getting a shirt as well. Did you get it?
I haven't, unless it's in my little mailbox.
Have you checked the mail?
Would this be something that they'd be able to squeeze into a small little mailbox, like at an apartment
Yes.
Okay, I'll have to go swing by and check it out. So we'll do that. I'm looking forward to it. I don't know which one you sent me. It's kind of like getting a mystery box. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and Gamecock fans were incredibly excited about Homefield. These guys do a better job on social media than about any other company out there I've seen it pumping up the release. So congrats to y'all. I think y'all were third all time as far as sales for release. Didn't quite get to Georgia and Florida, but still For a basketball season release.
You know what someone said, Wes, which was kind of funny? It's like you can look at how that turned out in terms of South Carolina finishing third with the sales. It's kind of like recruiting, right? You're or finishing a season well. Like you did so well, but you can still finish third in the SEC East just because that's just how tough it is. So I saw that comment. I don't know. It made me laugh because I think it's just very realistic when you talk about from a football standpoint how difficult it is. And, there's a lot of passionate fans in the Southeast. I understand Gamecock fans don't want to hear that from top to bottom. But, shoot, that's the reason why I'm working down here. I love the SEC. You guys are all nutbags in a good way. I think I'm a little bit of a nutbag now, too, after covering Gamecock football and, all these sports. So, great job finishing in the top three, and I'm sure those numbers will continue to go up even if that first day sales thing doesn't change.
Yeah, you gotta be a little bit of a nutbag. I feel like to be. I mean, the it just means more thing. Like I know we kind of make fun of that a little bit, but it's actually a perfect slogan because it's
awesome.
100% true. 100% true. NFL draft combine list comes out today. South Carolina puts Kevin Harris, Zaquandre White, and JJ Enagbare. Let's talk about who didn't make it before, congrats to those three guys, of course. But I'm a little bit surprised at no Jalen Foster. With what he did, Mike, the story there from walk-on to All-American, the production this year, and it's not like, sometimes guys just aren't NFL players, like as far as they don't meet the size requirements, they don't meet the speed requirements. Like sometimes guys just sort of get in that box where they're like, oh, this guy doesn't fit what NFL teams are looking for. That's not the case with Jalen Foster, I feel like. He's got good size. I mean, he can move around. I'm a little bit surprised, as productive as he was, that he didn't at least get an invite to the combine.
And it makes me wonder sometimes about the criteria and really how early they know in the back of their head who they're going to invite, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could see it all the way trickle down to even, Shrine Bowls, right? As high school players. I mean, you've seen kids just have absolutely incredible seasons, and you're like, wait a minute, they're left off. They're not going to the Shrine Bowl for South Carolina or North Carolina, whatever state it may be in. So I'd be interested to learn more about that. I actually, you know what, I might shoot and maybe we'll get a piece up later today or tomorrow on Gamecock Central. I'll ask Field Yates about that. Another Massachusetts guy. I'll ask him about his thoughts on that. Maybe he won't be able to give it to me necessarily on record, but we'll see if we can get something that at least we can share with you guys. Cause I do think that plays a role with it. Look, Foster was one of those guys that going into the season, I don't think anyone outside of people in that building really expected to do much, or at least do something to the level that he did, right? All-American status. You saw the stuff that Kevin Harris did in that bowl game. Did that propel him to be able to get that invite? If he doesn't have that performance, is he still invited because of what he really did last year? He didn't do as much this year. Obviously, the injury played a part of that as well. But these are the things that just go through my mind when I see some of that. I mean, also you saw a guy like Nick Muse not get invited. Nick got invited to I always call them all the Senior Bowl, the one out in Las Vegas, West.
Yeah, his wasn't.
Is that the East-West?
Yeah, I think that's East-West Shrine.
Yep.
Zaquandre and JJ Enagbare were at the Reese's Senior Bowl. That's the Mobile one.
But then you see a guy like White. I mean, White went off this year and he got invited. So I mean, it's always interested to see. We could sit here and blow smoke up people's butts and just say, oh yeah, it's all about who's the best people there. That's not always the case. And the guys that did get invited for South Carolina, I'm not taking anything away from them. That's phenomenal. But yeah, I mean, it stinks. It stinks for a guy like Jalen Foster because you feel like everything that he did this year, he did everything the right way. And you feel like a player like that from just from just trying to project where his next steps will be, you feel like he's a guy that can make a difference in the NFL. So I am a little surprised that he didn't get invited, but I could also see Nick Muse kind of being on that fringe as well, of potentially getting invited, maybe not getting invited, but more so with Foster, I'd say.
Yeah, and I mean, not that it's a direct correlation between like college stats and playing well in the NFL or even being considered to the NFL. But I mean, good grief, dude. If you're an All-American playing in the SEC and you're a starter, I mean, you would think that would at least get you consideration for the combine. Like it's not a guarantee you're going to get drafted high by any means, but you'd think I would imagine teams would want to put their watch on this guy and see what he runs and sort of find out more information, considering he wasn't a guy that was a known commodity for most of his college career. Now, of course, for him, the attention turns to pro day, and there's a little bit more, I would say, pressure on the pro day now for guys like Nick, for guys like Jalen to have good performances on that day. You can get to where you want to be without being at the combine. Certainly.
Oh yeah,
but it helps
absolutely.
to be at the combine.
No, it does. It does. I actually had the opportunity back in 2014 to cover it. And I mean, shoot, all it really is more than anything, obviously, the testing is a big part of it, but it allows you that opportunity to be face to face with a lot of these teams and scouts, right? You're able to have more interviews. I mean, the very first Senior Bowl that I had an opportunity to cover, if anyone remembers this, Wes, you might remember it. Back in 2014, they used to do them over at the Citadel, the Medal of Honor Bowl. That's where a guy like Malcolm Butler was discovered. He went to Division II West Alabama, but he had the opportunity to, number one, go up against some of the best players in the country. He was locking down guys from Florida during one-on-one drills. And then, I mean, shoot, I don't think anyone really remembers what happens in the games, but it's more so what happens in practice and what happens during those interviews. So, of course, from the combine standpoint, yeah, testing is going to play a big part. And from a fan perspective, from an outsider's perspective, when we watch on TV, that's the stuff we see. And I'm not saying that doesn't make a difference. It certainly makes a difference if you're looking at, okay, talking about a couple $1,000s here. Maybe, okay, this is the guy that's a little bit quicker. Maybe that would fit our scheme a little bit better if we go with the guy who has a little bit faster 40 or to me, the 40. I mean, shoot, Paul Brown invented that back in the day to figure out how quick guys can go track down punts. We still use the 40. To show me how many times people actually run a straight line without pads on in a game. But it's more so those quick movement drills, right? You think about the L drill, you think about the short shuttle. Those are great, but it's those interviews. So that's what I hate more than anything. And I think someone actually mentioned Parker White. I will say, just if anyone's interested, punters and kickers can get invited to the combine. It's just much different. They don't have the full combine experience as a receiver or quarterback. I would equate it to maybe a half version of what a quarterback kind of has as their NFL combine experience. But yes, kickers and punters can be invited, but Parker did not get invited, of course.
Do the kickers run the 40?
They do run the 40. Now they can opt not to run the 40.
Yeah.
I mean, shoot, to me, maybe a punter, it would be good. I mean, you see most kickers, but punters stay back, kickers stay back on most times. I mean, shoot, any team that I played on, and you talk to most special teams coaches, that's usually the case. They're kind of just like the safety man, right? I don't know really what you're getting out of a punter or kicker. I mean, like, we joke about that video with Parker White dunking. The guy's athletic. Does a coach want to see a more athletic punter? Does it really make a difference if the guy looks like Humpty Dumpty, but he can punt the ball inside the 10 every time? I mean, to me, I'd rather just see a guy be able to kick. But I don't know. I mean, maybe that's a question we can ask Pete Lembo. Would you want an athletic punter, or would you rather have someone that can just consistently get it inside the 10 every time? Do you really need to have a punter run a 40-yard dash? I don't think you do, but the heck do I know?
Well, I wonder if there's some correlation from an athleticism standpoint and being able to teach a guy, like maybe they're not a great punter at the exact moment, but if they're super athletic, maybe there's a little more room to grow as far as what they're capable of. I don't know.
And Will's mentioned it in the comments section. Maybe if a kicker handles kickoffs, yeah. I think, unfortunately, and I'm not trying to be a smart ass, Will. I think, unfortunately, with kickoffs, we're seeing it just go away from the game. That's not to say there's not kickoff returns as much. But I mean, look, shoot, Obviously I'm joking around about the 40, Humpty Dumpty. You definitely want to be able to have guys that are athletic out there, especially if you have someone as your safety, quote unquote, on a kickoff situation or a punter, right? And you have them back there. You want them to be able to move around a little bit. So, I just don't get it. I just don't understand. To me, I'd rather see them do like the short shuttle, where you're going to the to one side 5 yards, touching the cone, going 10 and coming back 5. I mean, to me, those drills, and it all kind of equates to what position you play. Like an offensive lineman, you want to see the broad jump. You want to be able to see that explosion. Defensive back, you want to be able to see just the, quick twitch muscles. How can you, flip your hips on a dime? Never really thought about a kicker, a punter, and a 40 though. So now for the rest of the day, that's what I'm going to be thinking about.
Well, all I can think of, man, and yeah, like you said, punters, it's kind of most of the time they're like that safety net, last line of defense. All I keep seeing in my head is the Spencer Lanning tackle attempt when Antonio Brown leaped and just like karate ninja kicked him for who knows why. And Spencer being a Gamecock and a York graduate where I went to high school.
He's a York guy too. How about that?
Yeah, that play is like ingrained in my head, and I still don't understand. It randomly gets posted on Twitter every now and then, and people all over again start talking about it.
I want to say it's like a reaction thing, and I'm not trying to pile up on Antonio Brown. I mean, look, we know that he's come out and he says, he doesn't have any mental health issue. He's got mental wealth, I think is actually what the quote unquote was on HBO with Brian Gumbel. But, God forbid if he is suffering anything, hopefully he's okay. But, the point being is I think, to me, it could just be Antonio Brown. Because like I said, when I watched it that first time and then like a couple of years ago and just going through my head, I'm like, it was just reaction. Like, you're trying to hurdle and then you realize like, oh, shoot, I'm not going to be able to actually jump him. All right, I'm just going to push my foot down. Like things like that happen all the time in sports. But as we've seen over the last couple of years, Antonio Brown is a different cat. And looking back at that, I wouldn't be shocked if he just did it just to do it, like you said.
Because he could.
Yeah, because he could.
Yeah. Dude, I'm kind of on the 40-yard dash. I mean, I get it, I guess, from like a top speed standpoint. Like, you think about wide receivers and running the go route. What, do they have long speed, basically? But I'm surprised that, and I guess they can sort of see how quickly a guy goes 15 yards as well within that 40-yard dash. But I'm surprised that like a 15-yard dash isn't a completely separate thing that they measure. Because if you think about it, that 10 to 15, you're running that 1,000 times more often than you're running a 40-yard dash at any position group. Like you think about a receiver, like running a dig route or running you're running that distance somewhat often. Even running backs, it's not even really about top end speed. You want the running back a lot of times that's explosive and can get to top speed quicker. They may not even have the best top end speed, but if they can get to top speed in a quicker scenario, then that's probably what you're looking for, I think, at most positions.
I mean, that's something when you're training, a lot of these players will go down to somewhere in the South, whether it be Florida. I mean, South Carolina to us folks up in Boston, we think is warm at this time of the year. But as I've been here for 6 or 7 years, I want to get to Florida if I want a little bit warmer weather. But the point being is that's something that they're training. I mean, that's something that they're timing consistently during their training. What is your time after that first 10 yards, after that first 15 yards? So from a training standpoint, for the last 20, 30 years that I can remember, they're constantly doing that. They've been doing that. They've consistently been doing that. Excuse me. So I say that because I think as technology has kind of caught up, we've seen it, whether it be on the NFL Network, or whether we've seen it from ESPN, where they show, that burst. Where were they 10 yards deep or 15 yards in? So I think we've seen that over time. The interesting thing is, and I kind of brought this up, Wes, but some people might not fully understand what I was trying to say. The reason why the 40-yard dash is even a thing, Paul Brown, back in the day, he wanted to figure out who the quickest players were on his team. And the average hang time of a punt, he felt like back then was around 40 yards, in terms of it would cover 40 yards during the hang time. So he wanted to be able to find players that could cover space that quickly. So that is why the 40-yard dash became a thing. And then for whatever reason, here we are in the year 2022, and guys are still running with it. And of course, they're not going to have pads on or anything. But it's become a big thing, especially for the smaller guys. I mean, the big guys, their big thing is, all right, how many reps can I get on the bench? There's some guys, all right, vertical jump. All right, how high can I get up? But, I mean, shoot, it seems like all the spotlights go on the 40-yard dash. And I don't know if they still do it. I know for a while, like Adidas, they would actually pay the highest, the quickest time if they wore Adidas shoes. I don't know, Adidas cleats. So I don't know if they still do that anymore. I think there was a part you'd be able to get this much money, or if you broke the record, I think you'd be able to get this much money, or we'll give you your own private island. I think was actually 1 year. I don't know if that was 2014 or 15. So look, the 40-yard dash is something that people talk about a lot, but at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. I mean, Jerry Rice ran a 4.7. I think his career turned out pretty good.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool promotion idea, though. To tie it to the 40-yard dash, which is kind of the most known event, I feel like, for the casual fan. Really, very smart marketing on Adidas's part. I will give them credit for that. Got to tell you about our final sponsor of today's show. Mikey, have you done your taxes yet, man?
I haven't.
You have not. Well, guess what? I've got you covered here, man. We've got a new sponsor during tax time, and they're a South Carolina Gamecock fan. My man, Larry Strawder. I just talked to Larry last week. He is coming on as a sponsor of GC Live, the tax team at Liberty Tax locations in Irmo and Lexington, and now also at St. Andrews Road in Columbia as well. You got 3 locations. They will take care of you, locally owned and operated. You can do virtual income tax preparation with local tax professionals, or you can go in person in their office, whatever you're most comfortable with. They're open evenings, they're open weekends this time of the year, and they will not disappear after April 15th either. So they're actually open any time of the year. A lot of people think, the tax folks go away. If you need anything done as far as your taxes go, the folks right here with Larry Slaughter, his team at the Liberty Tax locations are going to take care of you. So overcome your taxiety. Taxiety is that uncertain feeling right before you do your taxes. You're just not sure everything's right. So you want to go to some professionals. Go to 803-462-5576 and the Liberty Tax team, and they can take care of you. Do you do your own taxes, Mike, or are you going to go to a professional?
I mean, my grandfather did them for years. The original Mike Uva, he did them for years. Okay. And then when he passed away, we started going to a guy that was right next to where my mom grew up. So I usually get my taxes done in Massachusetts, but this year is going to be a little funky. I got the GamecockCentral stuff since I joined over in October. Then I have the Watch Fox stuff. I got the Bojangles checks that I need to put in. I got a lot going on here, man, and I'm not the brightest when it comes to numbers. So definitely might have to turn to these guys. If I don't go,
so what you're saying is you're going to give Larry a call.
Give Larry a call.
Yeah, Larry and the tax team at Liberty Tax locations, Irmo, Lexington, and Columbia. Again, welcome Larry to the team. What's up?
You see Charles comment, I hate the IRS and I do taxes for a living right now.
I think you're probably not alone in that, Charles. Nobody's waking up like, man, I just love the IRS. Like that's not a thing. But
well, you gotta be careful. We could have an IRS listener here. We love you. Please do not come after Wester Eye.
Yeah, let me give you Mike's address, not mine. But I don't know what that means, Jaylene. All right, so let's turn our final attention here, final segment, Mikey, to some new coaching hires. Not quite official by any means yet, but all signs still pointing to Jody Wright. As far as tight ends coach, probably will be official, I would imagine, next week. Board of Trustees meeting is currently scheduled for Friday. Will be an interesting hire. I think you look at that tight end spot. You need a guy who can recruit. You need a guy who can understand recruiting. Asking around, that's been one of the things that's been most mentioned to me, Mike, is just that Jody Wright is somebody who understands recruiting. He had 3 years with Saban running his recruiting department. He's coming in from the NFL now, which seems to be a little bit of a common trend with Beamer. What have your thoughts been on just what you've heard so far of Jody Wright? Seems to be a guy that's just going to bring some juice, and I hear he's really excited for this opportunity as well.
I mean, this is an opportunity for him to be able to get back into the SEC, a place that he's very familiar with. And I think during the Ask Me Anything thread on Gamecock Central that I did yesterday, but like as you mentioned before, for anyone that's listening that's new or that's new to Gamecock Central with our switch over to On3, we do different things each day where you guys can ask us anything. I mean, that's part of being able to take advantage of being a member, that we try to give you as much information as we can on not just stories that we write, but anything that we're hearing occasionally as well, and just thoughts. And some of the thoughts that I shared yesterday was just the fact that, people see him going back to college and they wonder if that's kind of like someone like, do we want that, right? Like, you went to the NFL, but he's coming back. Well, look, there's been a long history of guys that have gone to the NFL and come back for multiple reasons, right? Sometimes it doesn't work out. They'll think of a guy like Nick Saban. But sometimes coaches want to be able to get their feet wet in the NFL game to see, number one, is that what they want to do? Or do they want to come back? And when they come back, now their resume is built up, but they also have a different perspective of the game because they've been able to watch it differently with NFL guys. So I think being able to have that experience already of coaching in this area, and you mentioned it before, Wes, he's going to be able to make a big impact recruiting wise too, because this is a territory, depending on the specific territory that they send him out to, he understands what it's all about down here. But he also has that NFL experience now. And if you look at what Beamer has been able to do from bringing guys in that have that NFL experience, it's something that's extremely beneficial, because guys, I remember sitting down in 2018 with Marcus Lattimore. 99% of them, he'd said, scholarship-wise, believe they're going to go play in the NFL one day. So you want to be able to sell that, and being able to say, hey, look, this is how many coaches on staff that we have that have some type of NFL experience, whether it be playing, whether it be coaching. That can only help you from a recruiting standpoint. At the end of the day, Jody White's going to have to come out here and he's going to have to take care of business. He's going to have to do his job. But I just think that's an added bonus when you're talking about recruiting and just the world that we live in now with guys, wanting to go play at that next level. It's not that it's changed, but I definitely think it's grown over the last couple of years. A lot of these guys just say, hey, shoot, I'm going to the SEC. I'm playing in the NFL next year. That's not to crush anyone's hopes and dreams, because it's not going to happen for everyone. But I mean, a lot of these coaching staffs across the SEC, they have a lot of experience, and they have guys that do have that NFL experience as well. So it only helps USC when you look at it that way.
Yeah, and I think you look at the Sterling Lucas hire, and then you look at the Jody Wright hire, kind of a little bit of a similar approach from Beamer. And I think one thing, Mike, he's made it pretty clear publicly, but his actions have backed this up. I don't think Beamer's approach is to go just grab the biggest name assistant that he can find. Like, I think, it can be a little bit of a cliche to say they're looking for the right fit, but I think there's truth to that as well. These guys spend how many hours a year together under the same roof? And, there's going to be some times when not everybody agrees. There's going to be some times when there's some adversity. I think having a group that sort of fits together and is going to be pulling all in the same direction is incredibly important. And I think Beamer has showed he could have landed some more high profile assistant coaches, but I think he's more about who fits exactly what I'm looking for, who comes highly. I think all these guys have been highly recommended to Beamer. Mm-hmm. And I think all these guys have blown him away during the interview process from what I've heard.
Yeah, and I get it from a fan standpoint. It'd be great to bring in every big name coach, right? But that doesn't guarantee you anything. And a guy like Beamer, I think being able to have that perspective of, being able to watch his father firsthand and seeing how he was able to orchestrate a coaching staff at Virginia Tech and what they were able to do. I think more than anything, outside of the fact of Lincoln Riley and some of the other coaches that he's been able to coach under, I think he's been able to see it firsthand that the big names, like, that's great. Don't get me wrong. And at some point, if you have a coach on your staff that does well for a long enough period of time, they'll grow into a big name if they can do good things, be successful consistently. But yeah, I mean, it's so cliche to say, but it's the God's honest truth. It's just being able to get people that, number one, buy into what you're doing. And we've heard from day one with Beamer. He wants to be able to have guys here, number one, that truly want to be here, but number two, that are going to be ruthless when it comes to recruiting. And when you think about trying to build this program back up, trying to create a strong foundation, and they did that in year one. They've been getting after it from a recruiting standpoint. They've been getting after it in the transfer portal. They're trying to build off of that momentum that they ended with last season, but now they're adding pieces from the outside, which will happen. I mean, shoot, we could be here a year from now, and there could be another coaching change. I mean, that's just the world of college football. Who are they going to be able to bring in to be able to replace those guys, to be able to have that same vision? And it just sounds like everything you hear about Jody is that he has that vision. And obviously only time will tell, but that's what Beamer's trying to do. So some fans might not necessarily like it, or maybe they're not, maybe like's not the right word. Maybe they would like him to hire a bigger name, or maybe, you know, hire this guy over that guy. But at the end of the day, it's like, look, you need to be able to fit someone to replace a guy like Eric Kimry and then be able to take it to that next level. And if he thinks this is the guy, then, you know, give him an opportunity. Give him an opportunity. And he has, like we said, that pedigree of being able to coach both in the SEC at Alabama too, mind you, and then also coaching in the NFL for a little bit.
Yeah, and I think being a guy that's from Alabama, has coached in Alabama, at UAB, has been at Alabama itself, has been at Jacksonville State. I mean, you're going to bring some ties to that state as well that I think will be pretty beneficial in recruiting, because that's a state South Carolina has always really, I think, done a good job of just sort of spot recruiting. You're not going to get the guys that Alabama or Auburn want out of Alabama, more than likely. But can you grab players here and there that can end up helping your program? Absolutely. Look at no further than Tanner Bailey, 4-star quarterback who ends up at South Carolina out of the state of Alabama. So that can be kind of a low-key important state for South Carolina to be involved in if they have the right person recruiting it. And I think Jody Wright can be just that for them. The other news that broke this week, Matt Zenitz on 3 reporting that South Carolina expected to hire Devante Holloman. I think it's working towards that. It doesn't sound like that's necessarily official yet either, but I think all sides are working to make that happen, I guess. So if that ends up happening, Devante is on staff at South Carolina. We don't know what that title would necessarily be yet, but I think that would be phenomenal for both sides. It'd be phenomenal for the Gamecocks and phenomenal for Devante, and sort of continues, when you have an Eric Kimry leave from the on-field staff, you have Connor Shaw leave from the quote-unquote off-field staff, sort of the support staff roles. Very important, I think, for Carolina and Beamer to continue to maybe add back somebody who is closely connected to this program, graduated from the school, played at the school, because those things do sort of matter to fans.
Yeah, and look, being able to have a guy like Holloman is tremendous, right? And I'm not saying that he's not a big name, because he's a big name. A lot of people like him and everything that he's been able to do from a high school standpoint as well. But I had this conversation with Colin Taylor the other day when the news about Shaw, when we found out over at Gamecock Central that he was going to be stepping down. And I said, in that position, it kind of goes back to maybe a coaching standpoint. You don't have to necessarily bring in the high profile name to fill that role. Now, granted, with what Holman's going to do, we don't know exactly what the specifics would be, right? We assume to a degree that he'll be doing similar things to what Connor Shaw did. Mm-hmm. But as you mentioned before, and as Chris has mentioned over the last week, they have the flexibility to be able to kind of adjust that role. And that's going to be the beauty of bringing a guy in like that, if that does turn out to be the case. So the point being is, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this, because I'm sure I'll anger someone, but it is what it is. You don't need a guy necessarily like Sterling Sharp to have a role like that, right? I'm thinking like the biggest name I could think of, or a George Rogers necessarily. You need guys that are going to be able to relate, and be able to have an idea of what's going on right now. And obviously having experiences of coaching at the high school level will be able to help him relate to some of these players maybe a little bit better, because he's been around some of these 18-year-olds the last couple of years, right? So now they're making that jump to high school from high school to college. I think that's only going to help. But, look, bottom line is that is a tremendous opportunity for the student athletes to have there. And I'm glad that they're bringing someone in that did play at South Carolina, because I do think that helps. But like I said, you don't need to bring in the biggest name of the world. You just need to bring someone in there that, number one, gets it. But it certainly doesn't help. I mean, it certainly doesn't hurt the fact that he played there within the last 10 years and was pretty good too on top of it.
Yeah, Kevin says it's just not been released. He officially stepped down. His reason was job at the college level. That is true, Kevin. He did officially step down. That part is official. But it's not, unless it's happened in the last, I don't know, few hours. They were still sort of working through the process of making all that official. It is my understanding. So we'll see exactly what that looks like. But as Mike said, a guy that's certainly going to understand what your modern day student athlete is going through, and he's been around high school kids. So I think it should be a great transition and a good situation there for both Devante and for South Carolina. And I think that will allow them, in my opinion, with somebody new coming in, to maybe figure out exactly what they want those positions to be, because I know there's a little bit of carryover, like with what Derek Moore is doing, with what Connor Shaw was doing. Now you have Devante coming in. There's a lot, I guess, that goes into all those positions, and this will allow them to sort of structure different things. I even at one point wondered, the loss of Joe Bowen, who was more of a coach, who was helping out with linebackers, with Devante's experience there. Would that be tied in possibly? I don't know, but obviously we'll find out exactly.
And you always think about those things, right? I mean, I think naturally when Connor Shaw was here, we assumed like, all right, if anything ever happened, would Connor maybe want that position, to be the quarterback's coach, if that position were to ever open up. You think about these guys that have these roles, and, with Holloman obviously coaching at the high school level, it certainly doesn't hurt the fact that he does have that background. Of course, he's coached in the NFL. And I say all that because Connor was very hands-on. So depending on what exactly his day-to-day duties will be, one would assume that this, Holloman's going to be around the meeting rooms as much as he wants to be. And if he has the ability to do that, I mean, shoot, God forbid something happens down the road, right? And there's an opportunity, and he goes to Beamer and he's like, hey, look, just keep my name in mind. It doesn't hurt, because now you have someone that has been in that building, for the last, whatever it may be, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 down the road. And now you already have him in there. He understands what you guys are trying to do from a culture standpoint. So I think this would be a win in more ways than one, depending on exactly what his day-to-day operations and what his title would be once this hopefully gets named official soon, or becomes official.
No doubt. He is Mike Uva. I'm Wes Mitchell. I want to thank everybody for joining us on today's show. Mikey, what do you have in store for the rest of the week, man? What's going on? You got any closing thoughts today, or anything that the fans can look forward to the rest of the week?
Well, people don't want to hear from me, so I'm going to give you a quote that Shane Beamer sent me last night. If you haven't seen it on Gamecock Central already, Shane Beamer is going to be at the Gamecock Club hockey game on Friday. And some people might be like, all right, why is that newsworthy? Well, I think it's newsworthy because it just goes to show everything that he talked about when he got hired all the way back in December of 2020, that him and his family were going to be out in the community. They were going to go to as many Gamecock games as possible. And now that includes club hockey. So I think that is phenomenal. He, to my knowledge, will be dropping the puck to help celebrate cock hockey as they're to themselves.
Love it.
The 21st anniversary of the team. And this isn't like something that's uncommon from Gamecock football to help out. Just 2 or 3 years ago? 3 years ago, I'm losing track of time. I mean, that's what happens as these last couple of years keep flying by. Hayden Hurst donated $4,000 so that Cock Hockey was able to get their jerseys. So Shane Beamer, really looking forward to it. And here's the quote that he gave me. Really excited to watch Gamecock hockey Friday night. My last hockey game that I went to was in 2001, watching the Atlanta Thrashers. So for any Thrashers fans out there, Beamer, his last experience was that. And that's when he was a grad assistant at Georgia Tech. I love watching hockey on TV and have so much respect for the athleticism and the toughness required to play. I hope to see a ton of Gamecocks there with me. Those tickets will go on sale. They're playing Ole Miss. If you've never been, it's something special. I mean, even if you're not a hockey fan, those tickets will go on sale tonight at 7. The next night, they have their military appreciation game. I believe proceeds from that will be going back to a military member who has South Carolina ties, whether he's a university student or not. I can't remember off the top of my head, but the point being is a lot of stuff going on this week, and Shane Beamer will be out on the ice, Wes, and hopefully he doesn't slip Friday night at the Plex in Irmo.
That's what I was about to say, man. Would you see? I don't really know anything about hockey. I don't have any experience on the ice. How slippery is it, man? Like I'd be a little scared if
growing up, we used to put a hockey rink on the side of my yard. I mean, it was
no, you didn't.
I swear to God, I'll have to get a picture and send it to you. We used to put my dad would build one of those like homemade hockey rinks. It was great when the snow came because you were able to kind of pile the snow up a little bit around it, so it kind of made boards. Once get some water, kind of turn it into ice. I'd get the basketball hoop from the street. I'd turn it around. We played basketball on it, and we turned it into like a combination of hockey, soccer. You could slide tackle and just absolutely just kill each other. But I say all that because it all depends. Like these smaller rinks, sometimes the ice can get a little bit more slick in comparison to watching like a professional hockey rink. Typically, if he's going out there to drop the puck, and I hope they do this, maybe they're not going to have something like this. They'll have a carpet that they'll roll out so that someone won't kill themselves when they go out there. Like at the Boston Garden where the Bruins play, as a photographer, you'd have to throw on these things that kind of stretch out and they kind of have little spikes on them. And you put them on the bottom of your shoes. So photographers would actually still have stuff. I think they did. I don't know if you went on the ice, the Outback Bowl a couple of years ago when Michigan was playing South Carolina. We got to go down to the ice. So they had a carpet for us. So hopefully they have a carpet. But then again, I mean, shoot, Shane goes out there and there's no carpet. He can bring that helmet the Duke's Mayo Bowl sent him just in case he falls. So I think he'll be okay. He'll be good. It's
nerve-wracking, man. But the fact you had a hockey rink in your yard is just such a foreign concept for me as someone who grew up here in South Carolina in the South. Like, it sounds awesome.
Oh, I love, and it was pretty big. I mean, we used to have, my wiffle ball field was about, from home plate to the fence was 120 feet. So we had some, I mean, the hockey rink itself was a little bit smaller than that, but it was a pretty good sized rink. And then, we played football on it. We'd run down the side and someone would try to die. I mean, I don't understand how I didn't break my head as a kid on that hockey rink. But yeah, point being is this is going to be an awesome experience for the Gamecock hockey team to be able to maybe get some extra people that don't typically go out there because they want to see Shane Beamer up closer a little bit than usual. They're going to be able to have that opportunity. But on top of that, you get to see a hockey game. And I'll tell you what, if you're someone that grew up north, these hockey games are like a high school hockey game because you're practically on top of the ice. I mean, I brought our good buddy Jeff, who people on social media might know as Cox by 90. We went to the Clemson game.
Great dude.
The fans were so friggin' into it. They were banging on the glass. The glass actually fell off and fell onto the ice. I mean, that's how nuts it gets in there. So, and they have beer there too. So, I mean, you can't lose unless you get there a little bit late and all the college kids take the beers from you.
Cock hockey. Check it out Friday. Irmo Plex. Pretty cool venue too. So go check that out. All right, y'all. We're going to get out of here. We're done talking. Appreciate everybody for joining. Appreciate everybody that's in the chat. The support is definitely appreciated. Clint Hammond, our presenting sponsor. We appreciate you too, buddy. For Mike, I'm Wes. We'll see you all very, very soon. Y'all have a good one.